Under the blistering afternoon sun, the quiet suburban neighborhood looked like the picture of peace: manicured lawns, trimmed hedges, and that suffocating silence only found in communities with strict HOAs. My wife, Emily, had just finished unloading groceries from the back of her SUV when a black sedan rolled up, its tinted windows gleaming like obsidian. The engine purred low, almost menacingly, and when the doors opened, two men stepped out. They wore dark tactical pants, badges clipped to their belts, and shirts with big bold letters, HOA Security Police. To anyone else, they might have looked official. To anyone else, maybe, they could have pulled off the illusion. But to me, a former Navy SEAL who had seen real law enforcement, real soldiers, and real threats, I knew instantly something about them was wrong. Emily wiped her brow with the back of her hand and gave them a polite smile. "Can I help you, officers?" she asked, her voice cautious yet calm. The taller one, with a square jaw and mirrored sunglasses, didn't waste time. He sneered, stepping forward like he owned the street. "You're in violation of WA Ordinance 13. Lawn length exceeds regulation. That's a $1,000 fine." His voice was gravelly, rehearsed, like he'd delivered the line 100 times before. Emily blinked, confused. "Our lawn was perfect, cut just yesterday. That doesn't make sense. Our lawn's trimmed." The shorter one stepped forward, his hand twitching near the holster of a weapon that wasn't standard issue. It looked cheap, almost like a prop. He barked, "Don't argue. Pay the fine, or face consequences. You think you're special because your husband's military. WA laws apply to everyone." Emily tried to keep her composure, but I could see from across the street, where I had just parked, that she was starting to shake. And then it happened. The taller one, frustrated by her resistance, raised his hand and slapped her across the face so hard her head whipped sideways, her groceries spilling onto the pavement. Oranges rolled across the driveway, a carton of eggs cracked open, yolk bleeding across the concrete. For a moment, time froze. The neighbors peeked through blinds, some recording on their phones but too cowardly to step out. My chest tightened. The sound of that slap echoed louder in my ears than any gunfire I'd heard overseas. Emily's hand went to her cheek, her eyes wide in shock. That was it. The Navy SEAL in me, the man I had trained to suppress for the sake of living a quiet civilian life, snapped back to the surface. My boots hit the ground hard as I crossed the street, every step heavy with rage. The fake cop turned just in time to see me coming, but by then it was too late. My fist connected with his jaw with a sickening crack, the kind of impact you feel in your bones. His sunglasses shattered, teeth rattling as he dropped like a sack of bricks to the pavement. The shorter one fumbled for his fake weapon, but my hand was faster. I twisted his wrist until I heard the pop of tendons straining, then drove my knee into his ribs. The air whooshed out of him in a pathetic gasp, his body crumpling as I ripped the plastic badge off his belt and tossed it to the ground. "WA police," I snarled, my voice low and dangerous, every ounce of military discipline replaced by raw fury. "You're not cops. You're cowards." Emily was still trembling, her eyes wet, but she looked at me with relief as I wrapped one arm protectively around her shoulders. The taller fake cop groaned on the pavement, clutching his broken jaw, while the other wheezed for breath, trying and failing to get back up. Neighbors had started whispering louder now, phones raised higher. I could feel the weight of their stares, but I didn't care. My wife had been struck in front of her own home, by men who thought intimidation would make them kings of the cul-de-sac. They had no idea they'd just picked a fight with a man trained to end wars. And that was only the beginning. The taller one was still groaning on the ground, blood dripping from the corner of his mouth, when I dragged him up by the collar and shoved him against the hood of his own black sedan. The thud echoed down the street, and the coward yelped like a child caught stealing candy. My wife stood behind me, clutching her cheek, her groceries scattered like a crime scene across the driveway. My chest burned with fury, but I kept my focus razor sharp. Years of combat discipline had taught me one thing: anger without control was a weapon against yourself. And right now, I wasn't about to lose to these clowns pretending to be enforcers. "Listen carefully," I growled into his ear, tightening my grip as his sunglasses hung off his cracked nose. "You ever put your hands on my wife again, and you won't be standing after." I slammed him harder against the metal, his breath rattling in fear. The shorter one tried crawling back toward the car, still wheezing, clutching his ribs like he could hold himself together. I walked over, my boots deliberate, each step echoing the silence of a neighborhood too afraid to act. He raised his hands. Please, man, we were just following orders." That sentence froze me for a split second. Orders. These weren't just random idiots playing dress up. Someone had sent them. And in an HOA run neighborhood like this, I knew exactly who had the ego big enough to think they owned the block: Karen Whitmore, the self appointed queen of the homeowners association. She had made our lives miserable since the day Emily and I moved in. Complaints about the color of our shutters. Complaints about the sound of my motorcycle. She even had the audacity to demand I hide my Navy SEAL flag in the garage because it ruined the uniformity of the neighborhood. Emily's voice trembled from behind me. They slapped me. In front of everyone. And they thought they'd get away with it. My fists clenched, nails biting into my palm. No one touched my wife. Not in combat, not at home, not anywhere. I crouched down next to the wheezing one, grabbed him by his cheap vest, and yanked him up until his face was inches from mine. Who sent you? I demanded, my voice low enough to sound calm, yet sharp enough to cut through him like a blade. His eyes darted side to side. He stammered. I can't. She. I pressed harder, jerking him forward. Finally, he cracked. Karen. Mrs. Whitmore. She said if we didn't scare your wife into paying the fine, she'd ruin us. Said we'd never work here again. That was all I needed to hear. The pieces clicked together. Karen had finally crossed the line from annoying tyrant to criminal instigator. Fake cops, physical assault, intimidation, this wasn't petty war drama anymore. This was a war. I shoved him back to the ground, my disgust boiling over. You picked the wrong family, I muttered. Emily grabbed my arm, her voice soft but urgent. We should call the real police. This has gone too far. I looked at her cheek, still red from the slap, and nodded. We will. But first, I want Karen to see what happens when she sends thugs after us. By now, the neighbors had poured out onto their lawns, cameras in hand, murmuring in disbelief. Some looked horrified, others excited, like they were watching a live TV drama unfold on their street. A few of them whispered, "That's John, isn't he the Navy SEAL?" I straightened, pulling Emily closer to me, and raised my voice so everyone could hear. These men assaulted my wife. They're not real cops. They're puppets for Karen Whitmore. And I'll make sure she answers for this. The crowd gasped, some nodding in agreement, others shaking their heads like they were afraid of what was coming. I turned back to the two broken fakes. You're going to take me to Karen. Right now. The taller one coughed blood, tried to resist, then caught the look in my eyes. That was enough. He knew there was no winning. He nodded weakly. Emily squeezed my hand, her eyes searching mine. John, are you sure about this? I kissed her forehead softly, whispering, they thought they could scare us. Now it's time they learn what fear really feels like. And as I forced the fake cops back into their own sedan, neighbors whispering in shock all around us, I knew this wasn't going to end with just a confrontation. This was about to explode into something much bigger. Because when you bring war to a Navy SEAL's doorstep, you'd better be ready for the consequences.